I now have a very hard task. I need to pronounce names properly, which I will, I'm sure not do, but let me introduce each of our panelists, ask them to join me up here. And I'll start with Paramari from SCG. If you could please join me. And then Athankam from Mitr Phol Group. JJ Jiang from CP Group. And finally, Sharamporn from Bangkok Bank. Please join us. So for me, this is going to be fun. It's like an oral exam, but I won't treat it that way. But the goal is to talk about integration of AI into businesses. And we've got 4 leading executives from a range of disciplines here in Thailand to give us that sense. I'm going to moderate this. I'm going to ask panelists. We won't get to all 10 questions I gave you. We'll get to most of them. I'd encourage you to keep your answers succinct, but to the point. We want to hear what you have to think, but we each spend 10 minutes on a question. We're going to do 1.5 questions. And I'm going to jump around on the questions, but I know you've all thought about these. And I want to start with the integration question. As AI continues to evolve, what are the most impactful ways in which your company either has or plans to integrate AI into your operations? And if you can share an explicit example of how AI has driven a business outcome, that would be great. And I don't know if somebody wants to start. If not, I just pick volunteers. But
okay, I think I'm next to you. So it's very clearly that SG has looked at AI as something that provides huge opportunities and also threats. Okay, we are looking forward to get benefit from AI in 4 levels. The very basic one is for each of our individual employees to have the productivity gain. Okay, roughly we have just done a survey and they said that they are gaining around 10% of productivity, which was to our surprise. Okay, maybe because the base is very low. I think the next level of benefits that we are trying to get is to have big impact on productivity gains and better customer experience. And we are seeing some of the benefits already. I'll give you some example maybe later in the session. And finally, we are not there yet, but I think we are aiming to achieve that, and that is to have AI to help us come up with either a new business model or a business reprocess. Okay, we can, even with the same business, we can totally overhaul the process, how we do business. And we have so far, structured ourselves and employ resources accordingly. Okay? For example, on the second level of getting big impact, we have example groups of people in 4 main areas: operations, R&D, sales and marketing, and then the administrative activities. So we have champion on each of the discipline, and quite fortunate that as a conglomerate we have various kind of knowledge and expertise, and with this kind of structure, we are seeing some of the cross-pollination, some cross-leverage of all the AI activities and benefits. I guess I would stop here first so that others can, thank you.
If I can add to it really quickly, really interesting to hear the range, and I'm fascinated by the fact that early on things like productivity improvement are things you can do, but you ultimately want to get to business processes and business plans, and that's, I think, really valuable. But thank you, that's great. Hemantari.
Yep, okay. I have a good pleasure from him, so let me try. As for Mitr Phol Group นะครับ so we operate our bio-based business from sugar, of course, and along the value chains. So we focus on farm to table value chain transformations, which it evolved from the digital transformations into AI transformation strategies. So we focus around 4 dimensions of transformation balance scorecard. So the first area is around to improve business performance, both the top line and the bottom line. Among our 30 projects of AI ML that we are running, we have around 6 projects that already reached technology readiness level 7 and above, which have started to generate the business impact, like over 5 million sum of models, for examples. So that is one category of the intention that we aim to use AI to drive business performance. Second dimension is around to improve stakeholder experience. In our case, it's not just customer, but it's upstream, meaning farmers, supplier, communities to the customer. So in our case, we provide the tools like AI to improve stakeholder experience. Like to the farmers, we provide tools like eKYC to onboard them. So in the past, it took a few weeks for them to onboard, to engage with Mitr Phol. And now with the AI and eKYC and technologies, we reduce the time to just 5 minutes. For 25 farmers across the factory that we operate. So that improves the experience of our stakeholders. In terms of productivity, we also drive adoption of AI. At the current stage, we develop MidGPT, the internal version of the GPT-4o, and already used by 2,500 employees with a run rate of consumption close to 1 billion token annually. So that also improves the productivity of our employee as well. And finally, we focus on the digital capability of employee. So we aim to drive like 5,000 digital AI literacy of employee, which we work with HR a lot to develop the capability development programs. Yeah.
So already a lot in place, which is really great. Thank you. JJ?
Yeah, so CP Group is a large conglomerate in many verticals, so I just mention a few examples. So we use footfall traffic of our telecom to help open 7-Eleven store, choosing the right location, right? That helps with 14% increase of revenue for the new store open. So I think that's good. And then we use AI technology in our fintech solution, have zero account being taken over by scammers. So I think that's another thing, right? And we use customer support AI technology in customer interface that improve NPS score to over 95%, right? So I just mentioned a few examples that past we have been doing, right? And then we also use AI for network, telecom network, energy management that helps reduce energy costs by 10% over. So I think that's a few examples. But we haven't, there are many AGI from the large language model side we are getting in, but that's we'll talk later.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, I think interesting that there are lots of productivity things that are easier to deal with, but thinking about improving the customer experience is part of this as well. And all of you are thinking about that at some level of how do you change it. Charamporn.
At the bank, there are at least 3 specific areas and 1 general. The first specific area is on the fraud detection.
Yes.
And it has been, in the past 3 years, the number of fraud cases increased dramatically, especially on the retail, like mobile banking. So we have a lot of rules now that are popping up, and it's getting better and better. The second one would be for most of the Thai who transfer fund to the other person, now you require, if it's above 50,000 baht, you require the face recognition, the live test, that type of thing. So, and this has to, I think every few months you notice a new a better performance coming up, faster and more accurate, etc. The third one is about the credit card, the delinquency prediction, using the more data than what the bank used before. But for us, it's just a beginning. But I think this is an area of tremendous opportunity to improve. The last one is on operational. This is spanned across most of the bank area because we are in almost every area we have all like paperwork or operational, and so these now we focus on the input because a lot of input now we just automated using character recognition, using image, etc. So that improved on the cost side a great deal.
So these are great, and I'm going to follow up for those of you who want to respond to it. And Chair Point, part of it was driven by what you said. There are things that are operational that improve the performance of the company. That's valuable. It reduces costs. But your example of a transfer of funds above a certain level that now it needs to do face recognition before it will accept it makes me wonder about, and again, for any of you that want to respond to it, what's your customer acceptance of these technologies? I mean, do people resist a change in how they deal with things, or do they see this as a plus of, it's safer or it's better, it's more efficient? And again, invite any of you that would want to ask, but Chairman Point, if you don't mind, since you raised it, customer acceptance, do they find it invasive to do it, or they find it reassuring?
I heard both. Some who really scared about the fraud case, etc., they accept it quite well, but they complain that why sometimes you ask them to blink 3 times and I smile, and then you have to take off your glasses, and then we couldn't understand the instruction, that type of thing. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's both ways.
Others experience with customer acceptance?
It's not an issue in our case because since we have tried to enhance the capability of our chatbot, we never ask the customer to do anything more. So it's they don't feel anything except that they get better, faster response, more accurate response, and better information. Okay, so basically we hide everything behind the engine so that they don't feel anything.
In our case, it's more about when we do the technology adoption for the farmers, especially many of them are older generations. So it's not like we told them the tools, the AI and whatsoever, and expect them to use it. We still mix it with a human touch. So we still need the people to be with them, explain the technologies, explain why it is safe to use. When we scan the face, if they have question, we answer. When we scan the ID card, we answer all that. So yeah, human touch is what we use to achieve the change management part with the farmer, especially those who don't familiar with the technologies. And we still, that is the key point that we need to keep when we roll out technology with the farmer groups.
Yeah, great. JJ, do you want to add to this? You don't have to, but I'd love to hear it.
I think it's very good. I use the Bangkok thing with face recognition, right? It's quite seamless. So we do the EYC, right? The KYC for our True Money wallet. We make the biometric process is seamless, right? So improve customer experience, and customer care. After all, we use AI to improve customer experience. Enhance NPS score, right? So I think in that is generally helpful, right? As long as you simplify the step all the time, right, and make it secure. So I think it's well accepted. Yeah,
that's great. So I'm going to switch to a second topic. As preface, I think there are a lot of workers that feel threatened. AI is changing jobs. It's making some jobs much less useful, if you like. It's certainly changing jobs. I shouldn't say it's my favorite example, but when people ask me about jobs that are going to go away, I would not want to be a paralegal today, at least in the US, because an AI system can do the search, it can do the writing of motions, it can do a lot of the things. Although, as you heard, a lawyer in New Jersey who had it actually write a motion and didn't check it got into deep trouble when it invented cases. But, you know, there are jobs that are going to change. With that as background, my question for you is, how are your companies thinking about this? Both the talent gap of hiring new employees that have experience in this, but also just internal training or other ways of trying to help help workers upskill. And related to that, is this a place where you think universities should help? But I guess let me phrase it better. The question is, how are you dealing with the talent gap, and how are you dealing with trying to help employees adjust to the fact that their job may change? Paramata, I'm going to start with you again. Eventually, I'm going to go to the other end and start down there, so you're not always trapped first, but please.
Okay, I think I would start with the mindset. I know you start with the question of, do people feel threat of having AI replacing them? I think our mindset is not doing the same with less resources. Our mindset is doing more with the same resources. Okay, so our employees feel safe that they're not going to be replaced, but we want them to be more productive so we can grow business with the same amount of resources. So obviously we have been paving a road map on how to develop our talents. I think we use both, not both all, buy, borrow, and build. On the build side, we have come up with various activities and training programs to make sure that our people, firstly, are well aware of the benefit of AI, and they know how to upskill themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. It's a really good point.
As for Mitr Phol Group, from what I see, they are separate between two parts: the collaboration with universities and the talent sourcing part, and also the second part is around the talent development. But before that, I think Mitr Phol is quite lucky that people don't fear about AI replacing jobs, because we aim for a lot of business expansion, and people feel like with that target, we never have enough people to reach the goal. So obviously, AI will be part of the tools that help people reach the goal. And people don't have the culture to fear the technologies. Back to the talent sourcings, we do a lot of MOU with universities to source the AI talent with the professor, like with the professor in the satellite image processing, that process satellite image that land scan through the cloud, for example. Professor that work on the specific industry in the agri-tech, for example, and so on, or like logistic optimization, no? In that case, and we also do a lot of program with students, because now we cannot recruit them after they graduate, but we need to make the student have exposure with the project that we work with them since year one, even year one in the bachelor degree. So like for example, recently we have the Yes Hackathon event that we invite students from our university in Thailand, and then we got around 60 people invited, screen, and then compete in the business case of Mitr Phol Group in 4 different business units. And that is one example of how we develop the pipeline of the talent that we bring to the company. Yeah. In terms of the skill development, this one thanks to HR. They have like digital capability roadmap for executive level and employee level, how we're going to develop AI understanding for both executive level and for employee. And when we try, and we also try to promote employee to competitive in the event internally as well. Like last year, we have around 10 BUs that compete in the internal competition to build some low-code application. Some of them use AI. And that is kind of the culture and capability development programs that we have in the organization to promote them.
Great. JJ.
Our primary responsibility is to protect our existing investment. So we'll upscale the employee, right, through many AI training program.
Yeah.
We done a lot of training. And our CEO and many executives here lead some of the program to build innovation ecosystem. So we are building a center of excellency for technology partnership with international partners, startup at university. We're doing an executive training program with MIT in the planning as well. So this is our group CEO's vision, right? We have True Digital Academy, which helps train. We have CP University, and we have this center of excellency being set up here and to facilitate that process, right? Of course, we're open to top expert in AI, and we keep a constant discussion with startup and big and small technology company, and China, US, Japan, Singapore, Israel, England, right? So we build all this ecosystem so we stay on top of the curve. Yeah.
That's great. Chairman Porn.
To drive ahead fast, we focus on the driving from the mid-level up, the top of the pyramid first. So try to get the leader to pull their organization forward. So we use partners. We have 3 group of partners. First is definitely universities, both local and international. International definitely is MIT. At the Bangkok Bank, we use many programs with MIT, action learning, etc.
Yeah.
You have students coming in, and that helps a lot. The second one would be the software vendors.
Yes.
Because they are real expert in some of the area, so we use them. And the last one would be the consultants that has some specific knowledge. This way, if we can change the mindset and get the top management and middle management, get their feet wet, and we relying on them to drive the rest.
Yeah. What I heard here was a lot of examples of ways in which you can partner with universities. I like your example of also looking to the vendors as an example. Grow with Google is an interesting approach to trying to deal with it. Part of my question is, MIT has certainly thought about using our online learning platform, not just to offer MIT courses, but to think about, could we create more specialized courses, smaller courses? Many employees don't have 6 months to do something, and I'm inferring that this would be something that you would see valuable in terms of doing. Let me put one other piece on this. What's the role of the government? And I'll give you the example with as I'm sure you may know, with the CHIPS Act in the US, which passed last year on semiconductors. Part of that act created funding from the federal government to encourage universities to create specifically upskilling programs for people in that industry whose job was going to go away. I don't mean to put the Thai government on the spot here, but is there a role for the government to provide funding, or do you think that the companies just need to take care of that themselves? And just anybody who wants to comment on that, I'm curious your thoughts. JJ, looks like you're ready to go.
I think government role is to provide the sovereignty AI infrastructure.
Okay.
Right? I think they're in the plan indirectly building sort of infrastructure, right? It's very difficult, I think, for Thai private company to jump in that space because this is a big boys game in some respects, require billions of dollars. Yeah. So we have to essentially play our game smartly based on leveraging the giants, sit on the shoulder of the giants, right? And leverage our domain knowledge and do a way that don't get obsolete, right? But riding on the evolution of the foundation model and both over the world, right? So I think the agentic framework, as well as the application side, which we will try to shine, right? And government, of course, should support that effort with some some infrastructure support, right? But if they have the money, right? And that's a thing that I feel.
Chair Report, please.
The government has a very important role, especially on the education side. And I think we have too small number of graduates in the science and technology area. And when I had a chance, that was way back about 10 years ago when it was a stock exchange, we went to Mexico and heard the president saying about that country, and they produce 100,000 engineers per year. And I'm looking back and said, what are we doing here? And that was 10 years ago. But nowadays, the science technology is much more important than 10 years ago, yes.
And that's, I think, a great point that universities can help with, which is to think about how can we influence earlier education? How can we influence K-12 education? An elementary school student today, and this came up in an earlier discussion, the jobs by the time they graduate are going to be very different than what they are today. And so certainly government can encourage that, but I think it's also an opportunity for universities to think about how do we help with this. I'm going to switch gears, and again, I'm going to pick up on something that a number of you've raised. There are lots of users of AI who worry about ethical issues. And ethics can be around privacy. And Chair Mpor, I'm going to use your example again. I don't mean to pick on it, but I think it was a great example of, you do face recognition in order to do a bank transfer. I imagine you have some customers who are uncomfortable about what happens to that face image after it's done. I know in the US there are people who object when they go through security at an airport that it's face recognition. So there are privacy issues. There are also worries about accountability in terms of using this. And there's just worries in terms of legal liability. You know, if an autonomous vehicle hits somebody, who's responsible? You know, the owner of the car, the programmer who created it, you know, there's just a whole range of issues around there. How are you and your company thinking about essentially responsible AI use while still maximizing what matters to you, which is how well you run the business? How do you think about basically these ethical issues? And I'm going to start in the middle, just to spare people. So JJ, we'll go to you first on this one, if you could, please. Just how do you think about ethical issues?
Oh, first of all, transparent, right? Explain what we do, right? Because explainability is a difficult thing, but we explain through transparency, explain how we got there, right? You know the whole neural network, large language model, sometimes you don't really know how it inside work, but we talk about explainability in terms of what data source and why, what is the purpose, and being transparent. And make sure we don't do any bias, right? And we have governance process also in each project to oversee these things, right? To avoid this ethical issue.
Yeah.
And so that's it, I guess.
No, that's great. Chair Mpor.
Okay, accountability is the responsibility of the organization, that, like our organization. We cannot outsource accountability. So regardless of what, if you use it, is your accountability. Now, the problem is there are other layers, such as transparency, etc. So as long as you are do it with care to have the as transparent as possible, that would help. But for the AI, a simple one that I experienced, an easy one, was that how do you know that whatever you say, it has your organization name on it? Now, if anything that is wrong because of whatever AI told you to, and you don't understand where it came from, then at the end of the day, it's yours. During the Christmas, I asked ChatGPT to draw a Christmas picture for me. I said, okay, draw a golden eagle standing on snow, and the background is MIT Dome. Okay, it came out very nice. But unfortunately, the dome has a Capitol Hill dome on it, not an MIT dome, but the bottom is MIT, and it has a US flag on it. I said, I'm in Thailand, I'm Thai, you know.
Yeah.
So I asked them again to please remove the flag. They came back with slightly different picture, but the flag is still there. So ChatGPT does not know US flags.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
whatever you do and what do you say to others and you use the information that the ChatGPT know, well, bear in mind that it's smart, but sometimes it has its own problem.
It's a great example, and I appreciate your raising the, ultimately the responsibility rests with the company. It is your name that's on that, and I think that goes back to this question of how do you help your employees, your staff, ask the hard questions about, is this the answer I want? Is this something that I'm willing to deal with? And we'll come to that, I think, in the next question, but it's a good example. Paramati.
Yeah, at the very beginning of our AI journey, responsible AI was one of the very first topics that we discussed. Okay, but fortunately, I think philosophically, it's something similar to PDPA. Okay, so when we implement PDPA, it's about privacy, it's about transparency, and about protecting others' identity and information. So it was not that difficult for us to adopt this and communicate to employees. But I must accept that you need to take the right balance, because you want certain level of freedom for our employees to employ AI, but at the same time you want to make sure that they are using it responsibly. So we have a body at the corporate level that have the governance policy on that. But again, it's still about we call it a soft governance, okay? Because we still want the ball to continue rolling. Yeah.
That's good. Adam Kong.
Yeah, in our case, quite similar to SCG. So we also treat them AI governance, similar to data governance and personal data protection governance. So all of them are quite managed under the GRC, governance, risk, and compliance at the corporate level. So we do have the corporate policy endorsed by chairman level. So meaning all employee need to understand the policy, how serious that we take the governance of this kind of thing in place. And then with all the policy, we continue to drive the understanding of the employee, what they should do or should not do under a different situation. And I think employee will also appreciate that company has a clear direction about what to do and not to do under different situation.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to follow up on this quickly with an odd question. You may think all my questions are odd, but that's okay. As you think about ethical use of AI, are there cultural differences? And I'll give you an example, which I'll do quickly. For the last several years, I've given a series of 3 lectures at the Schwarzman College at Tsinghua, which is a great program of very international of future leaders, on ethical use of AI. And we were talking about face recognition and the use of face recognition. And in the US, as I'm sure some of you know, there are cities that have basically banned it. There's real concern about it. And one of the students totally surprised me. It's a young woman from France who was part of the program who said, last night at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was really tired of working. I needed some fresh air. So I just went out and I was walking on the streets outside of Tsinghua. And I felt completely safe because I knew that there were security cameras everywhere, that there was face recognition going on. I felt very safe. And it made me realize there may be a cultural difference. You wouldn't succeed with that in San Francisco or Boston, but there she had a very different view. So with that as a weird background, are there cultural differences? And what you may implement here, will it be different than something that gets implemented elsewhere, and how do you deal with that? And again, if somebody wants to respond to it, I would love just a reaction, but Are there cultural differences to the ethical use of AI systems? JJ, you shouldn't nod your head because I'll take that as a chance to jump in, but please.
I'm a non-Thai speaking here, so I may speaking out of steps, right? So my experience is that we generally follow Europe standard very well, like PDPA, GDPR, right? First of all,
Yep.
an AI Act, right? But in terms of trusting government, certainly the China side, privacy is important actually in China, despite whatever the America says, right? But they trust the government, right?
Yes.
Because they equally apply to everyone,
Yep.
right? Even in the toilet, you get a camera, they will make sure that nobody steals that toilet roll, right? So the trust of the government, I think, may be a little bit different from the US side, right? It's all about the experience, right? In China, it used to be 7 million children get stolen every year,
Yeah.
but now with camera everywhere, people are scared, right? But I think Thailand, somewhere in between, so I would say.
Yeah. Terraport.
I have a case of Thailand. For information about your credit worthiness, Thai, they don't like anyone to have it at all. Our credit bureau, compared to US and China, is very poor. In other words, information there is almost useless to anyone. So they don't want any of their information to be public. However, on your face, your picture, we post everything online. You know, Facebook, everything. You see who you are everywhere. I don't think the Thai care about your face is going to be somewhere else. You know.
No, it's
So
a good example.
Yeah.
It's a good example. It's a good example. I'm going to link this to another question that I know we discussed earlier, and that's the regulatory landscape, because certainly with ethical use, regulations can be part of that. And as we said a little earlier today, this is an area that's still very much evolving. And again, as I said earlier, I give credit to the EU. I think they've taken a good run at this. It's a good start to it. My question for each of you is, how are you as a company trying to engage with policymakers to ensure that the things that you come up with using AI are aligned with regulatory requirements? How are you trying to help influence those? And what do you see as the biggest risks in this space of you know, either a lack of regulation or an over-regulation actually getting in the way of using AI? But the general question is, how are you thinking about working with policymakers to try and think about the right way to come up with guardrails for this? And I'm trying to bounce around where I start with, so Athamkom, I'm going to start with you, but if you don't mind, and then we'll go down the road. But please.
Thank you. I think for Thailand and in ASEAN regions, I think regulatory are not really strict. Firstly, as in European countries, they are quite more favorable to the business. So, for example, the recent regulation around data center and cloud, they are kind of consult with the business a little bit, whether how regulate still possible to allow business to operate in Thailand. So it kind of bi-directional consultation between regulation and private sector side. So I think the regulation will not be very strict, but in a way it will not really loose as for Thailand. So I think as for private sector, yes, definitely we need to continue to monitor the regulation. As for Mitr Phol Group, we have the compliance team to always monitor the regulation and also work closely with government sector on that part. So once there are regulation, especially related to cloud data or AIs, then we translate into the GRC operations.
Yeah, that's great. JJ, regulatory issues, how are you thinking about it?
My feeling is Thai is quite conservative in regulation, right? They're weak, loose, flexible in execution, but they are quite strict in the government side. This is the feedback. Many startups coming here, they don't feel the tag is quite strict, right? In FDA food side of regulation, in gene editing, right? In data privacy, the act is quite strong because they follow the European side quite strongly, right? But they are executing more or less a little bit flexible, right, as well, right? So I think there's always loophole, gray area, like exome being used by many cosmetic clinics, even though it's regulated, completely forbidden. Their stem cell, their very thing, right? And similarly, I expect some of these areas, right, that could be coming in, right? They just don't know how to regulate this yet, right? So they look at the Europeans for the leadership, right, which is on the conservative side, and then adapt it execution-wise, right? This is just my perspective for observing here.
But I find it interesting that, again, that European model, it's not perfect, it may not totally apply, but it is a model that places use to think about this, right? Chairman Porn.
Okay, I observed that the reason why the regulator came up with whatever rules is because they see the risk has raised to the level where it has some certain impact on social or whatever that they regulate. So what I'm thinking is that we have to be able to spot the risk first of what are the risks in using. For example, if you want to use Gen AI, the bank will not allow the employees to use public Gen AI. It has to be an enterprise-wide. Because all of the information in public, you assume that it's going to be everywhere anyway. So we have to spot where are the risks, and if it happened to be something of concern, we should find a way to mitigate it first, because we know, and if we write, that one will become the regulation for sure, and therefore we'll be ready rather than be surprised by the regulator. So the last thing we want is we don't want to be the last who be prepared, and so I suggest that stick closer to the regulator would be also the best, because if you hear something first, you better move quickly.
Yeah, it's a great point. Paramati.
Just to add on a little bit, I think I quite agree that my observation is that the regulatory bodies are still quite flexible in this context. But the other side of the coin is that, the risk is now they are, I think, figuring out what to do with it. My fear is that because historically, when Thai regulators want to come up with something, they will go to Europe and Japan and the US and combine the toughest measure of all the three and put into one regulatory paper. And if that is the case, I think we're going to be in a very different environment. So I think I agree with Picharampon that even though they are quiet now, but once they start to give us some signal, we need to be very proactively work with them. Otherwise, we're going to be facing with something that we don't want to see, which is the toughest regulations in the world.
And that last point, I want to dwell on just very briefly. There was a study done a few years ago, a survey done by one of the business consulting groups. I don't remember which one it was, Bain or KMG or one of them, but where in different countries they asked people, who do you most trust to come up with regulations? And it was an interesting study. If you're interested, send me a note, I'll send it to you. But one of the things that came up in that study, and it goes back to one of the earlier things said, in China, they trust the government to come up with that regulation. In the US, they absolutely don't trust the government. In Israel, it's even lower than the US, so go figure where that is. But the one that consistently was high on the list, to my surprise, was universities. And I think the reasoning was a nervousness, and I think, Paramati, it relates to what you were saying, right? No disrespect, but if a government bureaucrat is setting a regulation on an advanced piece of technology, do they really understand it well enough to set it? Whereas one hopes that a university researcher who doesn't have a vested interest in it might do a better job. So I'm curious, again, any of you that want to react, should universities play a role working with companies like yours to help the regulators decide on this, or should they stay clear from it?
I actually see a lot of regulation recently that university sector help to lead the public hearing activity with the private sectors. So yeah, I think that really good point that you mentioned is really easier for private sector to discuss openly what are the concerns and whatsoever. Yeah, so I think yes, university did help.
So you just gave us more work to do, so thank you very much, but it's okay. JJ, please, go ahead.
My experience, Thai government does work with university like NSTDA, for example, for many regulation, right? So the private company can provide input from a business perspective, right? But they do work with university and research institute, in a way, government affiliates. Yeah.
One last question on this, and then we're going to switch, and we'll leave a little time at the end for questions from all of you. One of the things in the European standards that I found intriguing was, again, they had a set of levels of AI that you needed. The guardrails were a little different, but one of the things in many of them was that they tried to define standards of performance that a product needed to meet before the government would authorize the use of that product. In your experience, is that doable? You know, can you say you need a false positive rate of this or a false negative rate of that? Can you, and I'm sure it depends on the area, but again, for any of you that want to respond, is it reasonable to think about actually setting standards that a new product has to meet before the government would authorize its use? Charampur, please.
One case is on the performance of the service that the bank provides. Like the Bank Thailand has fairly strict, not regulated, but supervision or whatever you call. They can fine us if our mobile banking is down more than 8 hours a year. That is really serious, and it's published to everyone every month. You know, so yes, from the bank point of view, the standard can be set.
You can set it.
Yes.
That's really encouraging to hear. JJ, please.
PDPA is an example, right? We follow the government directive to have governance framework, like having a data officer with the process, at least the governance framework, and we have to stake claims that obey the government deadlines, right, certain degree. But in reality, I'm not aware of anybody get fined like the European. I could be wrong, but you guys can tell me.
Yeah.
So I'm not aware in CP we got there, right? So like I said, they generally conservative on the regulation and following the guideline, but flexible in allowance, tolerance in execution. So sometimes we clean up in the backhand to make sure we catch up, but we may not be at the day one there, but we make sure the framework is there.
Yeah. I'm going to do, sorry, Paramati, did you want to say something? Please.
Just quickly, I think generally, conceptually, if you can put standards on things, it's good. But whether you can implement it, you know, effectively is another story. So I think on AI, something that is still moving very fast. I hope that they will not come up with standards that will inhibit the progress of using AI. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to do one last question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. I can see we've already got questions showing up. It's probably an unfair question, so you don't have to answer it, but I'd love to hear your responses. If you put yourself We're what, 2025? Put yourself in 2030, 5 years from now. What would you like to see as a trend or capability from AI that would have a dramatic effect, not only on your business, but on your clients, on your customers? What would you love to see? So it's crystal ball. We won't hold you to it. I don't know, maybe Todd, when he runs this conference 5 years from now, which he won't do, will ask you, so what happened here? But you get the idea. What would you like to see? JJ, go.
One thing, humanoid robot, because we will have labor issue, talent issue, and efficiency issue. So humanoid robot, right? And of course, today we're already doing code writing and customer care, but in the food factory, in the retail store, to do many of the, I would say more than human intelligence,
yeah.
right? Because they can recognize misplaced item with misplaced price tag, right? They can see something lying around in the store, right? That could trip customers, so they can deal with it as well. So
I love it, and I'm going to do a blatant piece of advertising here. There's a company called Boston Dynamics that makes a humanoid robot. If you haven't seen their video from 2 years ago of their dancing robot, go check it out. It's better than most humans. It's not what you're looking for, but humanoid robots. Other things, what would you like to see? Charamporn, please, what would you like to see?
I would think the healthcare, like early detection, like the lecture this morning, you can detect like breast cancer much earlier, that type of thing. That would help because if not, we all going to be bankrupt by the
The costs.
The cost, because now the combination of insurance plus the high costs in the hospital are eating up your budget. So hopefully, if we are not sick or sick less, that would help.
I agree. It's a great example. Paramati.
Well, I might sound a little bit different, but to me, I think in this world, the biggest problem or the most worrying trend is the increase in inequality. So I hope that AI, in many angles, would be able to reduce that gap. Okay, we talk about education. How can people who doesn't have anything can learn very freely? The early detection of diseases, the new drugs that are accessible to more people. So I think, in short, to reduce inequality. Yeah.
It's a great example. Athamkom.
As for me, I think what I wish is that in the next 5 years, AI will make sustainability more accessible for more organizations. So meaning now when we do the scope 1, 2, 3, it takes a lot of effort to really collect all the information and implement all the actions, even for large organizations along the whole value chains. Not to mention now SME, how they're going to do that. So with the AI automation and everything, I hope AI will make all the activity around this entire scope 1, 2, 3 will become more accessible and down to the SME level. Yeah.
So I love the examples. I think healthcare is a great one. I think inequality is a great one. I think flexible use of AI is a great one. I will add my own I shouldn't say personal favorite, but one of the examples for me is I really hope that the technology for autonomous vehicles gets to the level where it can really be used, because the cost to nations of not just fatalities but just injuries is massive, and just the human loss around that. If you can drive automobile fatalities close to zero, it's a huge impact on a country. With that, we have a few minutes left, and I'm going to ask the staff, I know we've got a bunch of things on the list. Why don't we just go to the one that's at the top of the list? If you could post it up, we'll let somebody can do that for me, please. I think it says something like, we can't read all of it because the clock's in the way, so in your opinion, what would be? I don't see it up. Can you? There we go. All right, so the top one, if you could just highlight it. Anybody that wants to take this, in your opinion, what would be a good first starting point for a business to start integrating AI? So what's your advice to your colleagues about how do you get going in integrating AI into your business?
Customer care, I guess.
Sorry?
Customer care.
Customer caring, that's a good example. Other thoughts? Chairman.
I just say, just get the leader of that business unit to you have to educate them and awareness on the benefit or the risk of not having AI used as a tool. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Paramati.
AI is not free, so you need to use it effectively. So I think the first, like in many cases, you have to get the problem statement right first. Don't start with AI, but start with your business case and then try to figure out how AI can help you do that more effectively and cheaply and faster. Yeah.
Yeah, good example.
I think the first thing is, start with the ideation among the leadership teams and get the commitment and alignment together, what the organization should do with the AI. Yeah.
So increase the trust, that you're going to be able to use it. We got time for one more question, and so I've got to try and read that. I'll do it this way. Talk about the risk of data leakage privacy, which is believed to be difficult to avoid or control. Is it worth to compare the benefit of the AI new technology? So concerns about privacy and data leakage. Thoughts? Go ahead. Athamkam, go ahead.
Okay, in our case, it's quite lucky because most of the AI are not related to personal data yet. So we are more around the agriculture data, around manufacturing data, for example. So it's sensitive. Yes, we don't want to have it leak, but at the same time, it's not about personal data when we do it with AI. So at least we are quite safer in this case. But anyway, the company will need to do a lot of data protection, cybersecurity, and everything. But I have to admit that at the currently Mitr Phol, we do the traditional cybersecurity practice, but we are still exploring the AI security. So we're still exploring with a lot of partners how do we really protect the AI security. Yeah.
That's great. JJ, go ahead.
So I've been talking to people about architecturing this properly, right? A lot of people doing fine-tuning, right, and making API codes that actually share some of the privacy data, right, with third party. So in that respect, you also lose out when the foundation model evolve, become more powerful. So you have to retrain again, so it costs a lot of money. Or alternatively, you can take a different architecture that using your internal data, applying traditional AI tools that get some database knowledge, some graphs, right? But let the foundation model loosely coupled. So as foundation model evolve, increase, you don't get affected and you'll save your money and data privacy as well, risk, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you have all the internal governance, but I'm just talking about from architecture perspective that you protect about your future because foundation model evolve often surpass the specialized model. So you want to make sure the foundation model continue to improve and your specialized knowledge remain being applicable to that new foundation model. So using agentic framework, using loosely coupled architecture, this will help as well.
It's a great example. I'm going to ask the audience a favor. And I know I've had my back turned to this side of the audience much. Please join me in thanking our four panelists for what I hope you found a really interesting discussion. Thank you, gentlemen.